Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first match, really, of our top 8 weekend here for the Victory Road World Cup of Pokemon VGC. I say top 8, I mean top 4. It is semifinals. Costa, I am too excited to be here. This is what a great weekend this is for our penultimate weekend of the World Cup.
Yeah, exactly. And we've reached the stage where, it's all up for grabs for these 4 teams. It's going to be very, very close. They're very strong teams that have proven themselves throughout the entirety of this tournament. So absolutely pumped and excited to see both today and tomorrow's matches, as we are going to be doing something a bit different. Obviously, we're in the semi-final stage where there's only 4 of the teams remaining. So what we will be doing is featuring one of each of the 2 semi-final matches purely on each of the days. So today we are going to be covering the South Korea versus Italy match, and what a fire hyped set this is going to be.
Absolutely. This is one of the most exciting things for me. Now, Costa, the rest of the casting team today is from North America. So as the only European on the casting team, out of these 2 teams, out of South Korea and Italy, do you hold any bit of bias for the European Italian team, or are you kind of open to either one? What do you think?
I mean, that's a bit of a tough question because, you know me, I mean, if there's going to be a biased side of it, I'm going to be probably lured straight into it. So I love Italy. I've got quite a few friends from Italy themselves, so I do have that tiny bit of bias, but of course I have to remain partial, even though secretly I love Italy. But anyways, yes, we're going to be seeing, I'm just excited to see whoever goes ahead and just tries the best that they can with their teams. They're able to push themselves through to the finals. I'll be absolutely delighted regardless, because all 4 of these teams actually have tried so hard, and they've accomplished so much, both with their own teams, but as well in general with bringing that step up to this tournament itself. So I'm absolutely delighted and excited to see how it actually pans out today and tomorrow.
Well, like you said, if we cut over to the matches that these teams have had to go through thus far and the tournament bracket run that they've had, like you said, we're showing South Korea and Italy today. South Korea and Italy have had some really tough matchups. Italy had to play France, and France was the team that knocked out Japan. So that is another really tough team. They had a really tough matchup there. South Korea had to play Brazil and Thailand, which I know were 2 really exciting matches. And Switzerland and Italy was our closest match last week. So a really tough left side of the bracket there for both of these teams to kind of be moving forward with.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think you made reference to France, of course, being the team that were able to essentially knock Japan out. Italy were able to go ahead and run triumphant 7-0 versus France in the top 16 stage. So we know Italy, of course, they are the Euro Cup champions of last year. Throughout all of the years, they have so much experience and very top-notch quality players as well to boot. So it's no surprise to see them in this stage, to be completely honest. But then again, we do have on the other side of the field South Korea, which have done extremely well in going ahead and pushing the agenda and forcing that representation of the Asian side of community there. So I'm really excited to see how they've done. Of course, we do have China and Spain, which we will cover more information about tomorrow. So you do have this kind of weird situation of 2 Asian countries and 2 European countries just battling it out to see who will be able to be crowned World Cup champion of this year.
Absolutely. And for all 7 of the matchups today, like you said, these teams have some incredible players. And if we can take a look at the 7 matchups that we have, this is going to be an absolutely insane day. We've seen a lot of these players over the past several weeks. Exactly, all of the great team building. I know Italy had some really fun team building strategies last week that we were able to showcase a bit. But, we're starting off right away, Costa. You and I, we have Davide, Cauteruccio, and Wonseok Jang. So, I mean, running through the rest of the list here, I'm a little too excited that, I'm a little bit disappointed I only get to do a couple of these matches today, because like this awesome lineup of teams, we have an awesome lineup of casters today to bring all 7 of these matches.
Yeah, exactly that. So if you don't already have your snacks prepared, ladies and gents, I would advise you to do so, because this is going to be a very fiery day. We are going to be previewing, like Maeve said, all 7 of these matches. So make sure you're comfy, because we're going straight into the action, and we're going to go ahead with checking out the player profiles from our first match, which is going to be Wonseok Jang from South Korea rocking the Eternatus, Incineroar, Rillaboom, Suicune, Urshifu Single Strike from what it looks like, and the Ditto, and a lot of accolades of experience to their name as well.
Yeah, Wonseok has some really great records. 2 times in the World Championship top 32 is nothing to shake a stick at, but the World Championships top 16 in 2017 is incredible. Plus this, I say this year, time is an illusion for me here. 2020 Trainers Cup runner-up as well. But I love Eternatus. It's been one of those Pokemon as a restricted that we, maybe a little bit earlier on, we didn't see doing as well as it has been, especially in Series 10. But you throw Ditto on the team and now you have the possibility to have 2 restricted, so long as you can get yourself set up. Plus a couple of different Snarl options here with both the Suicune and the Incineroar to possibly lower that special attack if you're facing a strong special attacker on the opposing side, or even if you're facing something that could, maybe get some really strong setup, you could have Roar on either of those 2 Pokemon, or Roar on that Suicune as well, just to swap some Pokemon around.
Yeah, and I do actually like, you see the change up from Wonseok's team from last week in the top 8, where they did actually go ahead and bring that Groudon, Entei, Incineroar kind of core. So you have the bit of maybe a strategy going along, trying to pave out based on their opponent Davide's team preference. But I do really like to see the Eternatus, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it can actually do in this setup, as we will be going on to our next player of this first match, which is, of course, like we mentioned, gonna be Davide Cauteruccio, rocking the Zacian, Incineroar, Rillaboom, Suicune, Nihilego, and what is that? A Como-O.
Como-O is a Pokemon that you and I talked about a little bit previewing this match. Something that, like a lot of Pokemon in Series 10 that have come up, it's running that body press set that we've seen so many times. Jamie Boyd ran it on an Appleton with Rocky Helmet for Groudon. We've seen it on Ferrothorn for at least a year and a half now. It's been in Celesteela as well, was running that set, I believe. Sorry, not Celesteela, maybe Stakataka. Either way, it's been running around. It's out there. So Davide Cauteruccio has some incredible accolades to his name as well. Top 8 at Malmo, top 8 at Treviso Regionals, both in 2016. 2017, he was top 4 at the European International Championships as well. So again, 2 really world-class players here who you're not going to want to have to run into at a very early stage of your Swiss rounds at any sort of event here. So very excited to see what both of these players have. I like both having Tailwind on the Suicune. Suicune is that nice bulky water type for that fire, water, grass core that you see with the Urshifu and the Incineroar. Normally you have that the Rillaboom and the Incineroar. Normally you have that Urshifu Rapid Strike, but I think Suicune has some nice utility to it as well that you may not get with that Urshifu.
Yeah, exactly. And I am quite interested to see this change up as well from Davide's side. The last time that they were lined up in this top 16 playoff stage was up against France, where they were able to get that 2-1 win with a Palkia team. So, of course, really excited to see what kind of change up they're going to be bringing of style of play with their team, as we're going to be going, yes, into the first match, ladies and gents. So get ready, get excited, get pumped. I know I am. I know Maeve is too. So we are going to be seeing it from Wonseok's point of view. So at the minute, Maeve, of course, we can see a bit more of a clear image of the matchup. What do you think may be a big Pokemon player, let's say, in this situation that it might actually be able to, if there is any, to bring a very solid advantage to either side?
I think the biggest thing for both of these teams is getting those Incineroars in position. When you play something like a Zacian, you really have to be careful of it getting those Intrepid Swords up. You have to play a very position-heavy game, and Wonseok selected his Pokemon very, very quickly, so it seems like he knows exactly what he is going for in this matchup, Costa. Knowing that when you're facing something like a Zacian, with a Zacian, I mean, you have to be pretty careful about your positioning, what your lead is, if you send something out with an Intimidate, though. But first, we'll see Suicune and Nihilego here from Davide's side, while Wonseok brings out his Suicune and Eternatus.
Wow, yeah, so we got both Suicunes just facing each other off right now, and Eternatus versus Nihilego. So, of course, we do know Eternatus can run a couple of different sets. They could even run the Cosmic Power set with a Black Sludge, or even go for that Power Herb Meter Beam kind of situation where they get that automatic +1 special attack boost, and they just run wild if they're able to connect with it, of course. Nihilego, on the other hand, it is very good. It does obviously benefit from having that Power Herb Meter Beam strategy going for itself stuff as well. But in comparison to how the state of play is currently, I would say that the Eternatus does have a bit more of a leniency when it comes to the choice of moves here, because you never know. This Eternatus could even be rocking any sort of earth power, which may be threatening that Nihilego.
Absolutely, though. This Eternatus is going to go for a protect, though, right off of the bat. Not going to want to use any, not going to want to take any damage at all, possibly from something like this Meteor Beam, but this Meteor Beam instead could be going right into that Suicune slot. Most importantly, getting that special attack boost, and could just, you know, the issue too with Meteor Beam, and I will be crossing my fingers, is that this move can miss, but it does not. It will connect onto this Suicune on this turn, so that is going to do a good 50% of the HP to that Suicune. Suicune will eat its berry here, so it's going to be able to eat that citrus berry, get a little bit of HP back, and bring it back up to almost 3/4 of its HP here. And instead we'll go for a Tailwind this turn, so the Suicune on Wonseok's side being faster on this turn, while Davide's also goes for a Tailwind. So not sure if that's a speed tie absolutely yet, but you know, something to pay attention to moving forward.
Yeah, and we saw, of course, Wonseok just wanted to try to make sure that they could preserve their Eternatus and not be subjected to any sort of Meteor Beam damage there at +1. But Davide on their side of the field, choosing wisely, to be honest, just wanting to focus down on that Suicune, expecting maybe a potential protect coming out from the Eternatus there. They were able to actually reveal that Citrus Berry on the Suicune, so at the cost, of course, of being able to whittle it down a bit. So I'm curious to see how this may pan out right now, as we actually see a Dynamax Cannon coming out from the Eternatus.
Yeah, Dynamax Cannon for this Eternatus into the Nihilego slot here does over 50% of its HP, but it reveals the Life Orb, so that means that this Eternatus is not running Power or Meteor Beam, which is a really nice piece of knowledge to know. Sludge Bomb from the Nihilego into the Suicune on Wonseok's side. Suicune is going to fire right back with a Scald and not knock that Nihilego out, though. It gets so close, and it does not get the burn here, while the Suicune on Davide's side goes for a Snarl, lowering the special attack of both of these Pokemon. Most importantly, that Eternatus is not going to love dealing with that, especially if it can't get a Meteor Beam boost.
Yeah, and that Nihilego just surviving on the smallest of slivers of health right there. The double up not being quite enough. And from Davide's side, I do like the fact that, of course, Snarl is coming out from the Suicune. You want to try to reduce the damage output of both the Suicune and the Eternatus, most notably the Eternatus, as much as possible, especially since it is powered by that Life Orb. So we could even anticipate a switch up here, just so you can try to get maybe a bit more repositioning in a better situation for Wonseok, as Davide's Snarl just puts on a lot of pressure right now by being able to reduce that damage output, as the Suicune is actually going to switch out on Wonseok's side for that Rillaboom.
Yeah, and Rillaboom is not a Pokemon that the Suicune wants to face down, or even this Nihilego, with the possibility, if it stays in this turn, to get that free switch in for Davide. Instead, though, Nihilego is going to go for a Protect, going to stay on the field and be a little bit more problematic here in another turn. Though an attack from this Eternatus, possibly that Dynamax Cannon into the Nihilego, does not connect because of that Protect, while a Snarl from the Suicune will lower the special attack of this Eternatus once again. Rillaboom not going to seem to mind all that much, though.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense, you know, going for that passive yet sure Snarl play there is going to be more than enough to be able to reduce this damage output from the Eternatus, and that being it now at -2 of its special attack. Nihilego is, of course, susceptible to any sort of grassy glides. I'm not sure if Fake Out will actually pick up the KO there. It may, to be honest, of course, because that rock typing is resisting normal types. So at this point, I think Davide has a lot going for themselves. We know that both trainers did set up Tailwind at the exact same time, so I think it may be a battle of maybe trying to preserve that Suicune for future turns and maybe gain that speed control advantage over your opponent as the game goes on, as we're going to be seeing Nihilego actually switching out right now for that Zacian.
Yeah, Zacian comes in, and it does have the nice thing where it is not facing down any Intimidate Pokemon, so this Intrepid Sword ability goes off without a hitch. Suicune will also switch out here, and this will reveal the Rillaboom, so now we have all 4 Pokemon on Davide's side revealed here, which is great information for Wonseok. However, this Zacian... Excuse me, sorry. However, the Rillaboom will go for a U-turn onto the opposing Rillaboom, though. So now that this Rillaboom is off the field, it was able to do some nice, super effective damage, and this is going to allow him to bring that Suicune back in. We can see that it is that Ditto in the back, and if this Ditto could come in for where the Eternatus is, get rid of that special attack drop, and get a boosted Zacian in return for a Ditto, that would be pretty nice here as well. So I think it would be a nice piece of information maybe for Wonseok to gain.
Yeah, it really could be if they're going to be able to go ahead and do that. Like you said, I think Ditto could make a lot of sense here. And I think it's worth noting that Sludge Bomb from the Eternatus, it did try targeting the Nihilego. Maybe not the best of choices there. If you went for a Flamethrower, that would have been really good damage. You could have been able to deal onto the Zacian, but obviously due to the fact that the Steel typing is immune to poison types, we didn't see that attack get played out there. So the Eternatus is at -2 of its special attack. It does need that switch in, like you mentioned, Maeve. So, and we see Wonseok actually opting to go straight for that right now, so fair play.
Yeah, absolutely. The Ditto comes out here. Ditto is going to be very comfortable turning into this Zacian with that +1 Intrepid Sword boost. Also means, excuse me, that Wonseok left his Incineroar behind. So other important piece of knowledge too, there is no Intimidate moving around on the field here. Behemoth Blade though from Davide's Zacian will do a massive amount of damage onto either of these Pokemon and onto, excuse me, that is almost a full one-hit knockout here onto the Ditto, but not enough, just because that Ditto's HP stat can be so much lower than that Zacian's, and it will get knocked out by a Wood Hammer. So a really nice play from Davide to double into that Eternatus, knowing you might have a free switch in here. Another Tailwind though from the Suicune will allow, at least for Wonseok's side, to be faster, as the Tailwind ended in the previous turn for both of these teams.
Yeah, exactly that. I think, like you mentioned, Maeve, that was a very free slot to try to target down there. You know for a fact that Zacian will more than likely be outspeeding the Eternatus, and just making sure that you cover for the switch out, just it pays so much dividends there, because Davide was able to get rid of a very big player on this field that could have actually turned the tides, that being the Ditto. It just got knocked out immediately from that turn. So it does obviously provide Eternatus that free switch in right now, where there are no damage drops on it at the current moment, but it still is a situational position right now. Wonseok does have Tailwind on their side of the field, so they do have the speed control at least, and when you're going up against an Eternatus, you know, you do not want that Rillaboom to just be facing it square in the face there, which of course means it may be more prompted to try to switch out, maybe try to get a U-turn going, of course, if it does have it, and reposition on Davide's side.
Helping Hand here from the Suicune will boost up what is most likely a Flamethrower here from this Eternatus. A Grassy Glide that will be enough to knock out this Suicune by that Rillaboom. So now Wonseok is down to just 2 Pokemon remaining, I believe. So now this Eternatus is able to go for a Flamethrower into the Zacian. With that Helping Hand, it is not enough to knock it out. It gets it so close, just down to a sliver of its HP here, which is going to allow the Zacian to go for a Behemoth Blade and do a massive amount of damage here onto this Eternatus, which is not gonna love taking that. It is enough for the knockout as well. So now Eternatus is completely off the field. A great turn from Davide, having that Zacian still survive that hit there from a Helping Hand Flamethrower is absolutely massive.
Yeah, and you can tell that's a bulky Zacian there, so very well trained. Obviously being able to take that from Life or boosted. So the Helping Hand essentially transforming that Flamethrower into a stab type based move. Not even able to pick up the KO. And you see Wonseok there going for the forfeit at this moment. They're not going to be able to bring this back. 4 versus 1. Davide masterclass there in that game 1. So very impressive stuff. I feel like obviously even though Wonseok did have the Tailwind there, Davide just had the correct calls at the correct times. So when they found an opportunity to do so, and they thought maybe Wonseok could try to opt to go out for that switch out for the Ditto, they took advantage. They absolutely went for it. They got rid of it straight away, and Eternatus was left in an awkward situation where it needed to have Tailwind up, which yes it did, in order to outspeed the Zacian, but in the end of the day, it wasn't able to pick up the KO, even being boosted by that Helping Hand, and Grassy Glide just absolutely knocked the Suicune out of contention of that game 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think moving into game 2, you know, the Incineroar is a thought, especially for Zacian, but Incineroar loses to 2 Pokemon on that team. You know, it struggles against the Suicune with that Scald, and then it does not love sitting in front of an Nihilego with a Meteor Beam. So if you want to get your Intimidates and Fake Outs and Parting Shots, especially if this is an Incineroar carrying that Parting Shot, it could be really helpful, especially to deal with a Zacian. But you still have to be careful of your positioning, because if you send this out and you have the same lead here from Davide, and you have to face down a Nihilego right on turn 1, you're not going to be feeling pretty comfortable. You're going to have to maybe switch, allow something to maybe take that damage, or you go for that 5% chance that it misses.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of an awkward situation that Incineroars on both sides of the field are kind of met up against in this scenario. Although, to be honest, the Eternatus doesn't have, at least from what I saw, that Meteor Beam. It is boosted by the Life Orb, so that may be an indication. Let's say, for example, if Davide does want to try to opt to bring it there to try to slow down the progress over on Wonseok's side, they could do so, but no, we're not going to be seeing that. We're just going to be seeing, at least for now, the leads, the Suicune, Nihilego on Davide's side, and on Wonseok, we're going to be seeing the Eternatus Rillaboom.
Yeah, absolutely. At least put some fake out pressure on, which is nice as well. Suicune will allow Davide to get that Tailwind up first, unless, you know, maybe a fake out here and some sort of really powerful move. But then if you fake out the Suicune, if you fake out the Nihilego here too, you're not going to have to deal with something like a Meteor Beam maybe on this turn and can maybe get some nice damage off. But, you know, it's kind of a double-edged sword here because you only have one fake out.
Yeah, exactly that, because in this scenario you just need to make sure you get that turn one read correctly, as we do have open-end situations of huge damage being able to be dealt out right now on Davide's side. So of course the Suicune is good, but it does not like looking down against that Rillaboom, and that henceforth is why it switches out right now for Davide's own Rillaboom to have the fake out available for the next turn, and we see that Nihilego go for protect.
Yeah, Nihilego protecting, which almost I thought was that cosmic power there. Instead of fake out will not go into that Nihilego slot from that Rillaboom. Eternatus, though, will go for a Dynamax Cannon. This will hit the Rillaboom on Davide's side, who did just switch in. So a switch in for this very powerful Dynamax Cannon isn't going to be super comfortable, as it takes 50% of its HP from that Life Orb boosted move from this Eternatus. And now, too, this Eternatus with that Life Orb chip is still able to get a little bit of the HP back right now because of that grassy terrain from the Rillabooms on the field.
Yeah, and the double up there, very solid play from Wonseok. Obviously, we saw Davide felt like their Nihilego was slightly threatened there. They did want to try to get that fake out pressure available on the field. So good targeting there. Of course, we see that Eternatus right now is in a good spot to try to deal as much damage as it can. It is boosted by the Life Orb, but of course, Davide does have access to that fake out, which may come into play right here. So Wonseok may even opt to try to switch out that Rillaboom and get a repositioning dealt on their side of the field and able to apply further damage and threat, should I say, over on Davide's side, because at this point it's all momentum based, ladies and gents. You need to try to exert as much pressure as possible, as we do have some very direct Pokemon involved in this matchup. That's Zacian and Eternatus.
Yeah, fake out from the Rillaboom on Davide's side, though, into the Rillaboom on Wonseok's side is going to prevent anything like a Grassy Glide here, but a Flamethrower from the Eternatus will be enough to finish off the Rillaboom on Davide's side, so you're losing that switch out position with that U-turn and that fake out possibly later on in the game, taking a little bit of Life Orb chip, but most importantly, getting yourself in a better position. Sludge Bomb from the Nihilego is not enough to knock out the Rillaboom on Wonseok's side, also does not get the poison, but it still does a considerable amount of damage, especially because this Rillaboom wasn't able to move due to that fake out this turn.
Yeah, and I do find it quite interesting that Davide did just essentially throw their Rillaboom away. They kind of discarded it, maybe wanting a free switch in, but I do feel like it still had good viability in this matchup, as it's just got that pressure with the fake out and can even threaten the Suicune if Wonseok did bring it, which we got a little sneak peek that they did in this scenario. So I think Davide just needs to try to make sure that they don't lose too many pawns on their situation where they won't be able to exert that dominance as much as they could have in that game one, because right now we see that the threat is on I think Wonseok's side, so it'll all depend on if they're going for the read, expecting Davide to try to adapt in their situation right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You could also be preparing for something like a Tailwind, because now the Suicune is pretty comfortable to maybe go for one this turn, you know, even taking a Grassy Glide, just depending on how the Suicune is trained especially. But then if you focus on the Suicune, the Nihilego could go for something like a Meteor Beam. Instead, we'll go for a Protect. They're not going to want to take any damage here, though. Looks like a Dynamax Cannon from that, looks like a... It looks like a couple of different moves here. It looks like a Grassy Glide and a Dynamax Cannon into that Nihilego. So the Suicune is allowed to get this Tailwind up for free. A little bit of tough targeting here into that Nihilego. I can see why the double up would be so important, though, to stop something like a Meteor Beam from coming out here.
Yeah, and apologies, our Korean is not up to par, but we are trying to do our best. Of course, I think that double up, just wanted to try to make sure that obviously Wonseok can try to get rid of the Nihilego as a threat, you know, overall from this game too, because we saw it was, even though it did go quite quickly, it was able to do a lot of damage. It was able to deal that very big chunk of damage onto that Suicune in game 1. So in this situation, I would have obviously preferred that double up to be in the Suicune slot, but then there may have been the argument of, okay, well, that would give a free switch in to the Zacian, so you don't want to exactly do that right now as the Tailwind was set.
Yeah, absolutely. But now you can possibly set your own Tailwind in the next turn here. Nihilego, though, going for that Meteor Beam finally after so many turns, after a really early reveal of it in that first game, gets that special attack boost. There was no Protect, so this could hit either of these two Pokemon here. It looks like it missed, though. Oh, no, it didn't. So sorry. My Korean. The animation paused, but goes into that Suicune, does 50% to that Suicune, who will once again eat that Citrus Berry like we saw in game 1. Did a very similar amount of damage there. That animation pause just made my heart skip a little bit here, Costa. Suicune goes for a Snarl, though, from Davide's side onto Wonseok. Is going to lower the special attack of that Eternatus and of the Suicune as well, possibly to stop any sort of Scald knockouts, as that Nihilego hasn't really taken a whole lot of damage, but it will this turn from this Dynamax Cannon. So Dynamax Cannon is going to do a really nice chunk of damage onto this Nihilego. Even with that -1 in that special attack stat, still does a pretty decent chunk of damage here. Nihilego will gain some of that back, though, from the grassy terrain.
Yeah, it does. It just goes to show you why that is such a viable move on Eternatus. Stab boosted, of course, dealing so much damage, even at -1. So in this scenario, Davide is up to their old good tricks of game 1. They've got the Suicune on the field. Just clicking that Snarl button means that you can try to threaten that reduction of damage output onto both of Wonseok's Pokemon right now, as they are both specially based from what it looks like. So in this scenario, I think Wonseok needs to try to reposition well enough to be able to bring that Ditto in, but the Ditto needs to try to copy that Zacian, I feel, because in this scenario you need to try to get that very big threat on the field. Copy it if you can as a strategy, obviously, because it can directly threaten both that Nihilego, Suicune, and the opposing Zacian itself, as we just never seen a Sludge Bomb come out from the Nihilego, dealing so much damage onto Wonseok's Suicune.
Yeah, absolutely. A Scald here as well from the Suicune on Davide's side onto Eternatus. No burn and no poison, though, on either of Wonseok's Pokemon, which is a great piece for him to have, not working with a burn here. A Dynamax Cannon into the Nihilego brings it down just to about, a third or so, a little bit, maybe 40% of its health here, taking a little bit of Life Orb chip. But the Tailwind now for Wonseok comes up, so his Tailwind goes up a couple turns later, which means his Tailwind will last a little bit longer as well, as long as he can get rid of the threat of this Suicune.
Yeah, exactly that. I think that needs to be the priority right now. You do want to try to outspeed that Zacian and make sure there is no offset balance between current active Tailwind on one end and not so active on the other. So you don't want to try to get caught out from this. You need to try to make sure that you can try to get rid of that threat, but it's quite difficult to do that, as you do have both the Eternatus and the Suicune at -1 of its special attack. They are no longer able to get that much damage output as they would have first been able to do so. So even the Nihilego in this situation, you may need to try to get rid of it, because it is that low HP that is obviously susceptible to a Protect there, but you want to make sure that the Zacian does get onto the field at some point to allow your Ditto to try to copy it.
Yeah, absolutely. And a Helping Hand is a great way to get a lot of damage off onto either of Davide's Pokemon here. Nihilego will still go first with this Protect, so this Nihilego could be making sure it is not going to take any big damage here from that Eternatus, which it does not. So a really nice play to protect through a Helping Hand, while another Snarl is going to really mitigate the damage that this Eternatus and this Suicune can do. And especially now with grassy terrain off of the field, these Pokemon aren't going to be regaining any of the health that they're losing from those Snarls.
Yeah, and this is what we were just talking about, the fact that Suicune is not essentially being stopped right now. There's no Rillaboom on Wonseok's side of the field that could directly threaten this Suicune if they can. They need to try to prioritize to at least bring Davide down to their last remaining 2 Pokemon. And in this scenario, obviously, you just don't have the damage output you need if you're on Wonseok's side. The fact that both of your Pokemon are especially offensive trained-wise, it's not the best when you're just up against a Suicune you cannot even get rid of. And now, obviously, the Nihilego could even switch out for the Zacian, but no switch outs, just the Dynamax Cannon from the Eternatus.
Yeah, and this Dynamax cannon could be exactly what Wonseok needs into this Nihilego, but you can see even with all of these special attack drops, it's not enough to knock it out here. It does get it very close, but that's still not enough. While this Suicune goes for the Scald, we'll finish off this Nihilego here. So now Nihilego is off of the field. You won't have to worry about that being able to knock you out and maybe get some pesky Beast Boost as well. However, the Suicune is able to go for a Tailwind on Davide's side to keep up that speed, keep these two players on the same speed tiers here, instead of allowing for Wonseok to run free.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that's actually good for Wonseok that they were able to get rid of the Nihilego there, as obviously this Suicune has not been dispatched of. This Zacian is now on the field. It will more than likely be the fastest thing, based of course on both how the Eternatus and that Zacian are trained. So Wonseok, I felt like they needed to get the Rillaboom in much earlier to directly threaten that the Suicune, because in the end of the day, Davide has their Tailwind up right now. They have the Zacian on the field, so I think Wonseok, they've got a lot of damage dealt onto that Rillaboom in the back, so it may even be susceptible to a direct KO if it does switch in, based on, of course, the targeting from Davide's side of the field. But it's a bit awkward. It's definitely awkward. You need to make sure that that Ditto ends up being in the slot facing down the Zacian at full HP, as we're going to be seeing the Eternatus from Wonseok's side switch out right now for that Rillaboom.
Yeah, and Rillaboom, like you said, wants to be in front of the Suicune, wants to put on this pressure with that Grassy Glide, or even a Wood Hammer possibly. So it'll be nice to also get that Grassy Terrain up to heal its partner Pokemon here. Zacian, though, goes for that play rough into the Suicune, is enough to knock it out here. But that's really good for Wonseok, because now he gets a free switch in here for his Ditto. He will take a Scald on that Rillaboom, possibly trying to fish for a burn here. Does not get one, though. Will take just a small amount of damage and almost reheal all of that up with that Grassy Terrain. So now this Ditto is able to come in for free.
Yeah, it really is, finally, but I think we may have just seen that Wonseok's Tailwind just petered out, so henceforth why Wonseok is in such a dilemma right now, and thinking, you know, drastically, okay, do I bring the Ditto in, do I bring the Eternatus in, what is the best scenario here, because I do not want my Ditto to get directly knocked out from the Zacian, which will more than likely, of course, be outspeeding with that Tailwind behind it, even if this Ditto does have that choice scarf. So a bit of an awkward scenario there. You do actually see the funny interaction of the Intrepid Sword activating for the first time on the Ditto, but the fact that it did copy the Zacian while still at +1 means it is now at +2, but you need to be able to move first.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't fake out the Suicune on this turn, right, with your Rillaboom because of that Suicune's inner focus. So you have to deal with that Zacian. And we know that that double target from, I believe, it was the Rillaboom and the Zacian in that first game, was able to knock out the Zacian here on Wonseok's side, the Ditto Zacian. But a Grassy Glide does a ton of damage, well over 50%. Zacian goes for a Behemoth Blade here. This should probably go into that other Zacian slot. Instead goes into the Rillaboom, knowing the threat to that Suicune is enough to knock that Rillaboom out. This is going to force Eternatus back in, and Eternatus is going to have to deal with Snarl after Snarl unless Wonseok can take care of this Suicune with a Play Rough, which it can. So a really nice turn, a little bit of a trade here. Not great to lose that Rillaboom, but you were able to take the Suicune out in its place.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, that was such a vital KO to pick up, but in my opinion, I feel like that Ditto, aka Zacian, should have tried to direct that damage with the Behemoth Blade into Zacian. Zacian is the main threat right now. You can dispatch of Suicune. You've got a Zacian, which is at +2. You need to get rid of that Zacian. Of course, it may have been in anticipation of the Zacian going for the Protect, but knowing the fact that the Tailwind was still on Davide's side of the field meant that you would more than likely go for the attack, try to utilize all of those remaining Tailwind turns as much as possible, as, you know, you want to try to capitalize off of that, as we're just going to be seeing a very stalemate turn here, exchange of protects, Maeve.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, though, this Zacian is choice scarfed, right? So it's not a focus sash Ditto like we see sometimes. So it can't go for something like a Protect here and stall out the Tailwind turns like you know, like the Eternatus can. So it will be a little bit more susceptible to taking this damage here. It will be able to go first, though, now that Tailwind's over, and gets that Play Rough off. Not very effective, but still a pretty good chunk of damage from a +2. And then this Zacian will be taking a Flamethrower and is enough to knock it out here. So now Wonseok has made a great last few turns of that game to make him the winner of these games. Takes a little bit of Life Orb chip, but most importantly, we're going to game 3.
Yeah, that is the most important thing, definitely. I think there may have been an interaction there where, of course, we did see the tailwind peter out, so apologies there. Once again, we said we're not well-versed with Korean, unfortunately, but yes, that made a lot of sense there, because even though I felt like initially, maybe even a +2 Behemoth Blade, boosted, of course, from that Ditto Zacian, going into the Suicune at the HP that was still remaining, would have still picked up the KO, in my opinion. I feel like it may have, because that is just ridiculous damage. But regardless, obviously the player off did connect there to be able to try to put it within the flamethrower double up range, which is what you essentially needed. And Wonseok was able to just force that game. So fair play and very good shout out and props to Wonseok being able to pull that back in such a way. Honestly, it was one of those situations where it still could have gone either way, but it was definitely a battle of who had speed control and what kind of damage output they were able to exert.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that was important too was that Wonseok was able to preserve his Ditto a lot better. You know, it didn't come in and immediately take a double target and get knocked out right off the gate, which is something that in that first game, it meant that you were basically down one Pokemon before you even started. Weren't able to really get any moves off, weren't able to do any damage, especially with, like you said, getting a +2 because the Ditto copies the already +1 from that Intrepid Sword, and then as it lands on the field, it copies the ability, so then it takes another +1 from that Intrepid Sword, so then it's at +2, and it's also at an extra stage of speed due to that choice scarf, so it can absolutely be an absolute beast. A bit more of a glass cannon though, because its HP stat is the only thing that is not copied. So if you're able to protect it in game 3 like you were able to in game 2, you may be able to start steamrolling again and maybe be able to take care of some of the threats that were on Davide's team. Like, even I think the ability to handle that meteor beam with your Suicune and not being a one-hit knockout, allowing you to still have basically 3/4 HP at the end of it with that citrus berry regain is pretty nice as well. So I think it's really just a matter of making sure that when these Pokemon go for these big moves, that you're able to deal with them in a way that doesn't put you on the back foot, especially losing some momentum. If you lose that speed control as well, losing your Suicune can be tough early on, especially if the Suicune on Davide's side is able to stay on the field though. But here we go, Suicune Nihilego for Davide like we've seen, and then Suicune Eternatus, a really big callback to game 1.
Yeah, definitely is, as we are going to be seeing the same exact leads but mirrored from game 1, like you said, mate. So in this scenario, we do have, I think we have the same situation as game 1. We've got the fact that the Suicune can either opt to go for the Snarl or the Tailwind. I think Davide showing that they're not scared at all to click the Snarl button there. It just makes a lot of sense, but I'll be quite interested to see if there's going to be any sort of switch outs to any Rillaboom's, because we know 2 poison types are on the side, each side of the field, so it's quite dangerous to be able to do that, as we're going to be seeing 9 later for the Protect.
Yeah, Protecting once again here will not be taking a Dynamax Cannon from this Eternatus either. We will see the Tailwind from Wonseok's Suicune here, so that we'll at least be able to show that it goes first. However, we'll be seeing the Snarl here as well. Snarl will miss the Suicune on Wonseok's side, but it will still hit that Eternatus, which is its main target here, and lower that special attack.
Yeah, and I think obviously Wonseok would have preferred if it was the other way around and the Suicune had the drop and not the Eternatus. As of course we do know that Wonseok's Suicune does have Helping Hand in their arsenal, where they're able to go ahead and exert that additional damage output where needed. But in this scenario, I think the Nihilego is going to be quite tough to pin down right now, and Davide has a bit of a free Meteor Beam to target into that Suicune on Wonseok's side. So once again, Davide may want to try to get rid of the Tailwind pressure on Wonseok's side, have that Rillaboom safely come in, maybe even chip it down to the range that you're able to get that Grassy Glide KO. But of course, we do know it does have Citrus Berry.
Yeah, and that Nihilego is going to switch out here because it is no longer the fastest thing on the field, but Incineroar is a switch up here for Davide. Going to most importantly get some fake out pressure on the field for this Eternatus here. Going to lower the attack of both these Pokemon. Not too worried about it, of course, because the Snarl's doing more damage. And it will take a Flamethrower, which it's going to love to take, as it's not very effective at all. And the Life Orb recoil is almost as much as that, but a Scald is not good either. Brings it down to half of its HP here. Will eat its berry, so this Incineroar is also carrying a Citrus Berry here. Brings it back up almost to 3/4 of its HP, but you're going to see the Snarl once again, so still no Tailwind, but Snarl going to lower the special attack once more of Wonseok's Pokemon and hits that Suicune this time.
Yeah, so quite interesting to actually see Davide switch out right now and bring the Incineroar. I'm curious, I think this may be over the Rillaboom, as obviously they're aware that Wonseok's Eternatus is life orb boosted essentially, which means more than likely they're not going to be carrying that Meteor Beam, and the Incineroar should have a bit of an easier time in this scenario. But then again, Incineroar doesn't quite like having a Scald targeted into its slot right there with the switch in. So a bit of a situation where obviously the Incineroar already has its item used up there. So I would expect the Suicune, to be honest, to just keep on going for the Snarl pressure, and maybe even a parting shot come out from this Incineroar if it's able to survive this turn actually.
Yeah, it will be taking a Dynamax cannon first and foremost right out of the gate. So it's going to do a really nice chunk of damage onto this Incineroar. Still get it down to under half health, much more than the Flamethrower, but still not as much as you might expect here. Suicune, though, goes for a Scald at -1. Still doesn't get it down into the bottom 25% of its HP, but the Suicune is actually going for a Tailwind now on Davide's side. No Snarl this turn, knowing it was able to get one up for free, while a parting shot onto the Eternatus is just going to completely mitigate any damage this Eternatus could do, and it makes it so it's kind of just a sitting duck on the field, able to do only as much damage as it may be taking in recoil for some of its attacks.
Yeah, very nice follow-up play from Davide there. Slow playing it, but definitely putting himself in a very, very valuable situation, position right there, as they're going to be able to bring that Nihilego now. Very fresh off the fly. We see that Wonseok only has one turn remaining for their Tailwind, so all of the pressure right now will come out from Davide. The Nihilego honestly could try to opt to go for that Protect. Obviously, may be susceptible to a switch in of a Rillaboom Fake Out if Wonseok goes for that Predict.
Yeah, and there is a Rillaboom switch in here for this Eternatus, so there is going to be the nice ability for maybe a Fake Out on that Nihilego on the next turn, or a Grassy Glide onto either of those two Pokemon, that Suicune most importantly. Nihilego, though, is going to go first, is going to go for that Meteor Beam, so it could go into that Suicune, like you said. It would do about 50% of its damage like we've seen in the past few games, but it is a really nice amount of damage onto such a bulky Pokemon like that Suicune. You have to make sure that it does connect, though. It does this turn. I was not premature in calling it, thankfully. Goes into that Suicune, does over 50%. Suicune will eat its berry. We've seen it 3 times now. So now this Suicune is able to, gain some of that HP back, but it is a little bit more damage at the end of it. But it goes for its own Snarl, so it reveals that move here. It is a critical hit on the Nihilego. Most importantly, will drop that special attack, though. So you're losing some special attack boost, especially right after gaining one from that Meteor Beam. But then you also take another Snarl to deal with it with another special attack drop onto your Suicune, and then onto the Rillaboom, who is again a physical attacker.
Yeah, and honestly, I love the switch in from Wonseok there, playing very well, anticipating Davide's, kind of thought process there, and obviously observing quite nicely the situation on the board, as we're going to have the Rillaboom now free up to go for the Fake Out into Nihilego if it wants to try to get a safe Tailwind for Wonseok's side to be able to match Davide's. I think Davide does have 2 more turns of Tailwind remaining on their side of the field, and of course, it is able to pressure that Suicune if it wants to try and go and target it down. So obviously that leaves us susceptible to the Nihilego targeting into it. You don't want that. So we may even see a switch out from Davide here. They might even try to bring in the Zacian and try to threaten that very crucial immediate damage output. So it will be quite interesting. I think Wonseok on their side of the field, they're trying to keep the Ditto in the back like we've previously mentioned, Maeve, in order to try to get that kind of trump card situation going against Davide the moment the Zacian lands on the field.
Yeah, and Nihilego will be taking a Fake Out here from this Incineroar. Won't be able to go for anything on this turn. A Scald, though, onto the Rillaboom from Wonseok is not going to get a burn, most importantly, while another Tailwind from Wonseok's Suicune is going to be able to get up here and make sure that the speeds are, matching here for both of these Pokemon. But that's one thing I love right now about Davide's switch with that Incineroar, because if you get the Incineroar in the back protected and you have to deal with this Ditto Zacian, you can start bringing in your Incineroar and Parting Shot it, which is a really great option moving forward.
Yeah, that's definitely a very good option indeed. You would have expected maybe I'm not sure. I'm still quite divided on whether Incineroar or Rillaboom were the better choice. I think obviously we'll be able to find that out through the progress of the remainder of this Game 3. But honestly, it does change the dynamics of this matchup quite significantly, I feel, because obviously the Rillaboom right now isn't there to directly threaten the Suicune on Wonseok's side. And if you're Davide, you want to try to get rid of it eventually, as right now it's just causing even more trouble going for the helping hand.
Yeah, Helping Hand is going to make this Rillaboom Grassy Glide incredibly powerful, able to knock out this Nihilego before it takes something like a Sludge Bomb for its troubles and gets a knockout. So most importantly now, nice way to take care of that really pesky Pokemon. It takes a Snarl, only really going to bother the Suicune though on Wonseok's side. This Rillaboom could get snarled as long as it wants to. It will get some HP back for the next several turns and won't worry about that special attack drop.
Solid play from Wonseok there. I feel like Davide may have been caught a bit off guard there, forgetting about the Helping Hand or just simply not expecting for Wonseok to go for that straightforward play, maybe thinking that they may overthink the situation actually, but no, Wonseok, you know, targeted true, went straight for that slot. They were able to get rid of that Nihilego, but of course as a consequence to that, we do see the Zacian now on the field. So Zacian in a much better situation here against at least the Rillaboom right now, and it may even be susceptible to Skull Burns. Obviously I think Davide should be trying to best avoid that as much as possible, but we do have the scenario where Wonseok now sees a Zacian, and guess what, Ditto's in the back, and Ditto's looking forward to this lovely opportunity when it's first allowed to. So Wonseok may even try to either force down Davide to their last two remaining Pokemon, or even get a cheeky switch in where they can.
Yeah, and this is a great switch in here from Davide, knowing the moves that were selected. He was hovering over the U-turn and he was hovering over Scald, but in the end here, I believe it is going to be another Helping Hand Grassy Glide, but most importantly, yes it is. So it is that Helping Hand Grassy Glide, but most importantly, it's going into that Incineroar slot here. So this Incineroar is not going to be taking as much damage. It will not even be enough to knock it out here, especially thanks to that Intimidate, most importantly, while the Zacian is able to get a Swords Dance up. So that Intimidate coming in absolutely clutch right now, and Wonseok's Pokemon are still stuck on the field.
I'll tell you what, mate, Davide has guts. Like, fair play to him. He's going for the Swords Dance right now. He's got a +3 Zacian, obviously susceptible to the fact that a Ditto could come in, and guess what? That's a +4 Choice Scarf Zacian crowned, of course. So I think they're just going to have to be able to go ahead and best utilize that huge damage output that the Zacian carries right now. I'm not sure the situation of Tailwind between both of these trainers at the minute. I do apologize, I think I lost count, but of course they need to try, if you're on Davide's side, you need to try to get rid of that Suicune right now. You do not want to afford having that Suicune available for future turns to have that speed control, because it's all going to be about which two Pokemon are left and in what kind of speed control situation there is, if there is Tailwind or if there is not.
Yeah, and the Fake Out from the Incineroar will go into the Rillaboom, so this Rillaboom not able to do anything this turn. Suicune, though, able to go for a Scald, really needs a burn here on Wonseok's side. Does not get it, though. Zacian gets this Behemoth Blade off pretty comfortably without any burn mitigation onto the Suicune. And like you said, at +3 still does a massive chunk of damage here. There is no more Berry, and it almost felt like there should be, because that Suicune was almost at full health because of that grassy terrain. However, the Suicune is now at a lower stage of health, but you want to knock out this Suicune so that you can force a switch in and make sure that this Ditto can't come in front of your Zacian. But Eternatus is also still in the back here, and now grassy terrain ends, so there is no more Grassy Glide priority right now.
Yeah, and I do think one of the Tailwinds did end there. I'm not sure which one. But of course, in this situation, I think the fact that Rillaboom's on the field still and there is no grass terrain is definitely not nice, because obviously it's now susceptible to get directly KO'd from the Zacian. Obviously, I think Davide has to try to, you know, make sure that they target accurately in the concept of you do not want to allow too much of a free switch in, because you don't know what Wonseok might do here. They may even try to pull out, you know, that switch in to try to get that pressure on, because at this point Suicune, it may even just go down. It may just be used as a slot to get rid of it and bring that free switch in. As talk about switches, we're going to be seeing the Incineroar on Davide's side now for the Suicune.
Yeah, Suicune coming in at full health, while that very low health Incineroar swaps out here. But another Behemoth Blade onto the Suicune will be enough to finish it off here. Nice, very powerful Zacian with all of these boosts, and it won't be worrying about possibly getting a bird from Scald here. A U-turn, though, from the Rillaboom into the Suicune on Davide's side will allow for Wonseok to come in. He will be forced to bring in the Eternatus and the Ditto here, possibly, so that he could maybe get this Ditto out. He has to make sure, now that you have neither Pokemon on the field, that you're careful about which side you bring it in, which is one of those things that I think we've seen maybe once during out this World Cup, that maybe it didn't go into the right slot.
Yeah, and I think Wonseok doesn't want to risk it at all. They go for that Ditto. And guess what, ladies and gents? Yes, we're going to be seeing a +4 Zacian, crowned, of course, accompanied by a very, frisky choice scarf, because it may be a cold day out. So it just wanted to make sure that, it was well prepped for this scenario. As we're going to be seeing Wonseok now available to go for a free switch in. You could easily bring the Rillaboom in right now, regain that grass terrain, and have either fake out pressure or even go for U-turns in anticipation of any sort of Incineroar switching on Davide's side, because in this scenario I think Davide is like, okay, listen, I'm looking down a +4 scarf Zacian. I need to try to make sure that not only do I somehow reduce his damage output, even though I don't think you can at this point, you just need to try to make sure that you can shut it down, have that fake out pressure available. So I think this turn Maeve is going to be so crucial on which slot each of the Pokemon are going to go for, or if there is going to be any switching, to be honest, because there could even be a very easy Tailwind setup from Davide's side.
Yeah, it's definitely a 50-50 here, right? Because you can go for the fake out onto the Zacian and you stop it, but if the Incineroar switches into that slot, or even into the Suicune slot here, which isn't going to have to worry about getting faked out, it could possibly take a Grassy Glide instead, but even then, you're still allowing your Incineroar to come in, but instead, Zacian's going to protect. There will not be an Incineroar coming in to possibly take some damage here. There is going to be an attack, though, from one Zacian onto the other, I believe, or sorry, a Grassy Glide from the Rillaboom onto the Zacian, but a very nice +4 play rough is enough to fully knock out that Suicune on this field. Zacian, though, still sitting pretty strong, but most importantly, there's no Tailwind. And you've got Incineroar coming in who could possibly fake out or parting shot right now and not have to worry about going back to Davide's team here.
Yeah, that was a lovely scenario for Wonseok there. Able to not only, of course, connect with Play Rough, but more importantly, pick up the KO there on the Suicune, forcing Davide now down to their final 2 Pokemon. And I think Ditto can easily switch out right now for that Eternatus, where I think Wonseok's thinking about it, as you want to try to make sure that you can maybe target down that Zacian and essentially checkmate it with that Scarf, accompanied by it. Because in the end of the day, you just want to try to get rid of the Incineroar, preserve your Ditto, make sure there's no fake out pressure whatsoever on the field, and you could just absolutely go for the Behemoth Blade, and of course at +4 guarantee pick up the KO there. So I think Ditto, for me personally, should be switching out right here. You need to try to be able to guarantee its safety for future turns, because in the end of the day, it may win you this game, unless you think that Eternatus can still finish off this situation for them.
Yeah, and you have to make sure you get rid of this Incineroar before you can go for something like a couple of parting shots to be a real pain in the butt. However, it's going to go for a fake out onto the Ditto Zacian here, so that Zacian's not going to be able to move, while the Zacian on Davide's side is going to go into the Rillaboom with a Behemoth Blade here. Does enough for all one-hit knockout, maybe just a little bit of chip beforehand, but that means right now that this Eternatus has to come in. This Zacian will be able to move earlier than this Incineroar, but you have to make sure you get rid of this Incineroar first before it can go for something like a parting shot and just be really pesky.
Yeah, exactly that. I think in this scenario, we've got, of course, the Eternatus coming in right now, and the Zacian still being stuck into Play Rough. So I'm not sure if this is enough for Wonseok. It should be, if, of course, the Eternatus is going to be able to outspeed the Zacian. But in this scenario, I don't think there's any Tailwind left at the minute. Time is coming quite down, so it may be quite crucial to see the speed interactions right here. I'm not sure if that may have been a potential throw, depending on how the outcome of this turn is going to be, as I do still stand by the fact that the Ditto switch out to try to guarantee would have made a lot of sense, as you would be able to bring in the Eternatus immediately after. But we'll find out, because the Rillaboom, there was no chance at all that it was going ahead and surviving from that +3 Behemoth Blade from the Zacian.
Yeah, but the only issue I think too is if you do swap out and bring in that Eternatus, right, and then you get your knockout on your Rillaboom, your Ditto has to come in and then copy an Incineroar, which isn't exactly the best play that you always want to deal with, though. Instead, there is going to be a Flamethrower from the Eternatus onto the Zacian here, and to do well over 50% of its HP. However, we're going to see the Zacian on Davide's side, I believe, go for a Behemoth Blade onto the Eternatus. It is enough for the knockout here. So most importantly, that play rough miss on that Incineroar is absolutely massive, because now this Incineroar isn't going to get knocked out. We'll be able to go for a Flare Blitz, and that is enough for a one-hit knockout onto this Ditto Zacian. So a very rough play rough miss by the end of the game. Just one of those moves that is a really tough move with accuracy, not able to always hit, especially in these crucial moments when you need it to. But that means that Davide has put 1 on the board for Italy versus South Korea.
Wow, what an ending to that first set, my lord. Honestly, oh my, I don't know how I would feel if I was Wonseok right now, because you were there, you were at the pinnacle of the moment where you could have grabbed that KO. But no, play rough being the move that it is. Yes, it's a lovely, you know, physically offensive move, you know, especially when it's boosted by same type attack bonus. But in that scenario, not the best. The fact that you could go ahead and miss and just cost you the game is not what you want to see at all. So huge congrats, of course, to Davide being able to go ahead and put that #1 score for Italy versus South Korea. But, you know, what a way to go about it. Obviously, I think it was in a scenario where both players played really, really well, but it's just that one moment, that all it takes is that one turn to immediately change a score.
It's just one of those tough games, right, where every single turn is absolutely crucial. Both players played incredibly well, and it was a very exciting game. There weren't any turns where I'm like, oh, well, the next 3 turns are very predictable. We're all running on a flow chart. Games decided from turn 1, you know? It's very exciting to see both of these players duke it out with some really interesting teams, some great adjustments. But that's what happens when you're choice scarfed and you copy a move that's not 100% accurate. It comes and it bites you at literally the worst possible time, right on the edges of victory here. So again, a very exciting match to start off our semifinals weekend, Costa. We will be taking a quick break though, and we will come back with our second match of Italy versus South Korea. Don't go anywhere.
Catch you in a bit.